That's what we call a transition.
Yes, a fantastic segue.
You ever ridden a Segway?
No. The best I've done is the motorized
Walked?
not looked like a tool. So
How did we start talking about Segway? Why did you bring it up?
because all we're doing is talking about things that are unrelated to Star Trek.
Oh, right. Well, maybe we should stop that. As you know, this is the measure of an episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek genuine Star Trek and not just really good TV. Really good, solid, enjoyable television.
Yeah.
I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and I was gonna say what the wrap up of Lost should have been. But we do this
Wow.
with 3 criteria. The first one is there sci-fi inextricably integrated into the plot of the episode? The second one is that sci-fi novel or unique? And the third one is there a moral or ethical dilemma that a character must face? I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week we watched Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, Episode 10,
Oh, yeah.
The Stars at Night.
Are big and bright.
Which, now that I think about that, I don't know why it's called that.
Because it's the heart of Texas. Like, the song is...
Oh, the stars at night.
Yeah.
Clap,
Clap, clap, clap, clap. Deep in the heart of Texas. Do you know why I know that song? Probably for the same reason you do.
Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure.
Yup.
But I never knew like the first 2 little lines that he says. I have no idea what they are because he just sort of runs over them.
Right.
I could have done. But it works.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could go down there and do that.
I feel like at this point, yes. I would imagine in like those
Probably.
first like 5 or 10 years after the movie came out, you couldn't because you got beat up for it.
Just get shot.
Yeah.
At least it worked. All right, the blurb in this season 3 finale. The Cerritos crew must prove their worth in a mission race, which is weird because that's kind of like not what the... I guess it is. I guess it's not the race that they're talking about specifically, although there is a race in it. But it's the race against obsolescence,
Right.
right? That's the theme, if you will, of this episode.
Yeah.
And boy, am I sad. Do you know why I'm sad? Can you predict why I'm sad? Who's my favorite character in the show? I'll give you a better one. Who's my favorite admiral in this show?
Okay. Buen amigo.
Right. And Buen Amigo turns out to be Mal Amigo.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's very sad. He just kind of flips immediately to being a bad guy.
Yeah. And then like he kind of leaned
Immediately.
hard into it. Yeah.
Yeah. What I liked about this was they made changes. They didn't stick to their formula, I guess, which I liked. It didn't feel like a Lower Decks episode, which I liked, but it still felt like one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just hijinks on the ship. Mm-hmm. It felt like something happened. Although I guess in all of we've seen 2 other season closers, and they all kind of escalate to critical mass.
And then happily reset by the end of the episode. Except for the season
They
2
did.
finale. Season 2 finale actually did end on a cliffhanger with Freeman being arrested. Season 1 and season 3, they both had these huge stakes, and then somebody pulled a Hail Mary, and it was actually Shaxx both times, managed to save the day.
And he saved the day again.
Yeah. Without sacrificing himself, which is nice.
Right. He was so happy. And I was so happy for him.
I know.
It was great.
Well, it's like what if Worf was allowed to, if everybody listened to Worf, you know?
Wasn't sure if I was inferring too much from that.
No, Shaxx always
But
suggests emptying the abandoning the warp core.
But is that sort of taking the place of Worf always suggesting they fire phasers and photon torpedoes?
I think it originally was, yes, but as Shaxx
okay.
developed over the seasons, like that's just kind of the character who he is.
Right. Okay. Okay, I have a question for you. I don't know if I'm late to the party on this one.
Okay.
But it seemed like it was subtext. These new ships that Buen Amigo has been working on, and they are Texas class, right?
Yeah.
Meaning they're autonomous. But I think the fact that they named them Texas is because Texans or Texas itself has been very pro-gun and very typically conservative for the most part. And they are warships. And also the flagship of the Texas class is called the Alito. And is that perhaps a subtext of Justice Alito, who has certainly made the news lately?
Right.
If you've been paying attention, as sort of a conservative stalwart. So am I just saying what everybody else knows, or am I grasping at straws?
No, I don't think you're grasping at straws. I don't know if that has been actively addressed. But just like the California class had all of the ships being different cities in California, Alito is a city in Texas.
Okay, so that's probably not a reference to Justice Alito.
But out of all the cities that they chose Alito. So maybe it is.
It's not spelled the same. So I don't know. It just felt like
Right.
because although they would have written the script a very long time ago, certainly not.
Yeah, but that's an easy last minute change.
No, because it's written on the side of the animation.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll never know because all of the writers are dead.
Yeah. Well, they were all fired. Yeah. And they were given NDAs. They wiped their memories.
Right. So they did something very interesting in this show, which is they
That was
showed
a reference,
a little
Paul,
bit of.
by the way, how Rutherford his memory was wiped. Like, did you watch the episode?
I wasn't even paying attention. Sorry, I missed your reference. It was a good reference.
Bajoran
It
prophets.
wasn't your fault. It was my fault.
Okay.
Now I forgot what I was going to say.
All right. Well, let's see what we're watching next. Oh, sorry.
Watching
So
Deep Space Nine. Okay, so they did something very interesting in the show.
yeah.
They showed a little bit. We got a very quick run through of what a second contact would be, and maybe they've done this before in the show, but the idea was that they were going to race against the Texas class and see who could do second contact fastest. Which is, I mean, they took it so seriously, like there was no jokes.
Right. Well,
No joke,
so
no
for
jokes.
me, the joke was how like second contact is supposed to kind of be like, hey, how's everything going? You know, like these are what can we help with? What are some upgrades you guys need? You know, like what's some guidance? Blah blah blah. And the first planet they land on, you know, they're like getting ready. And they're like, okay, upgrade these systems. Go go go! Like,
And the only joke was that on their first planet that they go to, the race comes out and says, hello, we are very fortunate. And they just kind of steamroll over them
right.
and just to get all the stuff done. And I wonder, I mean, because it just seems like a ridiculous premise that who can do first or second contact fastest. Because I actually had this when Buenamigo was talking to the council, and he was saying the Texas class can do second contact better than the California class. And I originally thought that the Texas class was just going to be for protection because it's just like a warship.
Right.
And why would you give, like, why do you need, or how would you accomplish something like second contact that requires some diplomacy and et cetera
Right.
to talk to people? And I was like, this is stupid. Why would you ever assume that could be handled by just a computer? So, and then they did this kind of ridiculous race, and I didn't quite know where they were going. Like, it seemed like it was sort of a tenuous plot line at best that the Texas class was going to replace it. I don't know. Did you not have this? Do I think too much about these episodes?
No, I had kind of the same reaction. You know, it was like even when Tendi found the microbial life, you know, on the second planet, and they all stopped. My thought was kind of how the episode ended anyway. I was like, well, like the Alita is like out of the running now anyway because they didn't do first contact properly, let alone second contact.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool that they could beam in. The Texas class could literally beam in finished things.
Yeah.
Things that wouldn't fit in the starship anyway.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. And I like that when they beam them in like it's a SimCity game. And it just kind of like, they beam them in about a foot off the ground.
And just
so the
have it
rest
come
of
crashing down.
drops to
Right.
the
And everything's fine.
ground.
Right.
Yeah. I did like that. That was pretty cool. That seems like technology that everybody could use because we can just stop building things and just beam them in wherever we want them.
Well, just as you can have, you know, transporters go on a buffer loop, essentially, you know, or whatever it's called, where the person is just waiting to have their transport completed. It makes
Right.
sense.
It's like a never-ending colonoscopy where you're just always asleep.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Well, no. So I don't like. It makes sense that you would be able to have something completely built in an area that's too large for a spaceship, or for a starship, and then beam it up, but don't finish the transport. Just keep it in the ship's logs, and then go wherever you need to with that information, and finish the transport wherever you were, or wherever
Oh,
it needs
I
to go.
see. So I thought that it was sort of materialized. It was sort of replicating it as it was beaming it in.
Yeah, that was the impression I got too.
But you're right in that there could be a ship that was just all transporter buffer.
Yeah.
And you could literally move continents of city to another planet if you wanted to with enough of these giant ships. Like there was just an ad, not an ad. I just read a story about somebody who'd gotten their hands on a Netflix data node, which is basically like a giant server machine. And it had something like 278 terabytes of data in it. And it was just for storing all your favorite movies.
Right.
And that's kind of like, that giant like 10 by 10 box.
Right.
Probably not 10 by 10. It's probably like 3 by 3, 10 by 10, this gigantic car of a computer. But that kind of thing where you like it is specifically to hold data. It's not meant to play games or to word process,
Right.
or to get on Netscape Navigator.
Right.
It's meant to do one thing, and that's what these ships would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be cool. In fact, that is the novel science fiction for me in today's episode. I feel like we need a sound effect. Yeah.
Right.
Because that's pretty novel. We've not seen that. I mean, we've seen people beam stuff that's not people before.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I would think that would be way easier for the computer to beam,
Inorganic stuff? Yeah, I would say so.
especially because they need to continue living after they rematerialize.
Right.
So what do you think about that now that I've broached the subject of it being the novel science fiction?
I was going to say, yeah, I think it would be easier for a ship to transport inorganic things. Yeah, no, that's fair. I would agree with that. That it's that the novelty is what you said. Sorry, what did you say?
You weren't listening at all.
I did, but then I started thinking about the joke and I forgot what you said originally.
That they can beam stuff, that they're beaming giant finished buildings. I mean, it's hard to tell actually how big those Texas class ships are.
Right, that's fair.
So it's unclear if they are pre-built inside of the ship or if they're just materializing.
No, they
if they're
said
just replicating.
something along the lines of, Captain, they're teleporting.
Finished structure.
Yeah,
or something
finished structures
like,
like
that.
a half-built generator or something, or half of a fully built generator.
Right. From Finland.
Well, yeah, because usually they're packed flat to pass the savings on to you. So it was very surprising. But I wish I could remember that line.
But that's the gist of what they said. I guess the
Yeah.
the specificness of what they said is
Right.
important.
But-
I mean, I think what the line was, it did imply that it was already finished.
Right.
I don't know how that's possible.
Well, and that was shocking. But I think about like the episode of Next Generation where they beamed up that whole area of all living things that was like in the middle of a storm, and also the Irish one where they beamed up like that whole farm and put them in the cargo bay to make sure that like they weren't overly surprised by the technology or something.
I'm trying to remember if there's been any
Right.
like any kind of thing like that.
Mhm.
I don't really know if they're
And I genuinely don't think so. I think the most that they've done is like a tractor pull of something of immense size to somewhere else and not actually teleport it.
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that this is something that
We haven't seen before.
we haven't seen before,
Yeah.
or at least on that scale.
Right.
Because that was a huge thing.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's anything that would fit on because the Texas class ships are smaller.
Right.
So, because they don't need people and bathrooms.
Yeah, actually, I
and
didn't.
bunks.
I didn't think about the fact that it would need to be smaller because people weren't in it.
I'm sure most of a ship is to, clean up after humans.
Right. By force if necessary.
The bathroom makes you go to the bathroom.
No, remember we already talked about this. They just teleport the shit out of you.
Oh, yeah. Man, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? How many times you been asleep or wake up and you have to use the bathroom and you really don't want to get out of bed. You can just be like, boop.
Right.
But there's a malfunction and it just beams half of your intestines out by mistake.
Right. I mean, think about the process that like the number of lives lost of trying to fine tune.
To me, it's kind of like when LASIK first came out.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, it would be really convenient to not have to wear glasses, but in terms of wearing glasses versus potential blindness forever,
right.
you know, that's the same calculus that I think the people of the future would be making of like, is it really that inconvenient to get out of bed versus beaming out all of my intestines?
Right. I'm having to carry around a bag for the rest of my life.
Not just any bag.
Right.
A very special bag.
But at the same time, like I feel like it could be fine-tuned to the point of finding the inorganic material in your body and around a certain area and just beaming all of that out.
Yeah.
Like there goes not only your waste, but there goes cancer. Like, and I would imagine that that's a big part of how that's done.
Well, yeah, I don't know. They don't go into that of how they cure cancer in the future.
Right. Well, obviously, because people nowadays are taking notes like, oh, that's how it's done. Like, of course.
Well, shit, we did the flip phone way before flip phones, right? We as in Star Trek, as in I've now just assimilated myself into it. Flip phone is I mean, why can't cancer be next? Here's my guess about that.
Okay.
Here's our cancer corner for the episode.
Our medical minute.
I don't think I think that part of it, probably not all of it. This is not curing, this is preventative.
Okay.
I think that the food that they eat is probably just jam-packed full of nutrition.
That's fair.
It's not something that they grow out of the ground
Antioxidants
or anything
specifically.
like that.
Yeah.
Or just anything.
Right.
Like everything and anything that you eat is like a supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
No matter what you eat is gives you everything that you need. So that in and of itself would probably knock cancer out. They say that like 10 to 20% of cancer is genetic and the rest is environmental or lifestyle.
Right.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Theoretically, 80% of cancer could be gone away just if you just get enough nutrition and don't smoke.
It's just funny how, authors and writers just come up with what's the most futuristic thing you can think of that's like could be science-based, but not anytime soon. And it sparks the readers and their scientific minds to actively go out and make that a reality.
Yeah. It's not that Star Trek was predicting anything.
No.
It's like, we think this is where it's going to be. It's like, no, the people that watched Star Trek thought that was cool and they wanted to go make it.
Right. Right. And it's kind of fun that that is why the flip phones were one of the first phones, first portable mobile devices to be, because it was like Star Trek.
Yeah. The Razor. Remember the Razor?
Mm-hmm.
It still exists, by the way. It's still out there.
I know. It's now full touchscreen, which is pretty cool.
Well, yeah. So I held one of those flip phones.
Mm-hmm.
That are not whatever they're called, like whatever they're calling them with the foldable thing, where the whole thing is like the screen itself folds.
Mm-hmm.
There's no hinge. Mm-hmm. And I immediately was like, what problem is this solving? Why do I need to close this? It's like super thick.
Right.
First of all.
When it's closed?
Like a razor. When it's closed. Yeah. Super thick. Mm-hmm. And it's not that much smaller. It's not like, oh, finally I can fit a microwave in my pocket.
Right.
It's not that it doesn't take up that much less room. And all it does, if you want to interact with your phone, adds a step.
The one I don't think the Razr has this, but I think the Samsung one does. It's not just a touch screen on the inside, but there's a touch screen when you fold it too.
Right. It has a screen on the other side of it.
Yeah.
But again, my phone doesn't need that because it's just always on the front, right?
Right. So I think the idea is it's basically to combine like the Apple Watch and the phone together. So you don't have to open and unlock your phone to see what's happening. What?
So you keep it on your wrist.
Right.
The giant.
I mean, they're going to try to make gauntlets a thing again.
What's a gauntlet?
It's the forearm cover, the forearm like brace that they had in medieval times.
Oh, those are cool.
Right? But no, I just realized about Apple Watches, like it's just a fancier pager. Like you use it basically to check your text messages, which is what pagers evolved to. Do you remember that?
I never had a pager. I kind of was born too late for that. Anyway.
Yeah,
what
so
were we talking
that
about?
actually all of that convinces me that yes, that is the novel sci-fi in this episode.
Nice little button on it. I like that. So I think that this episode once again kind of demonstrates that Freeman is not a great captain.
Yeah, it's as the writers see fit.
I don't know. They showed her as being impulsive, like she wants to do this race and that she wants to win. Like she's super competitive too.
Right. Actually, you know what? I don't think it's Freeman.
You think there's a captain behind the scenes?
I think that she just like Rutherford, she's been manipulated in some way, because you're right. Like this captain is very different in season 3 than she was from the first 2 seasons. And when we didn't see her was when she was arrested. And so I think,
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I like that.
yeah. So I think
like
that I think that there's something going on with Freeman that the audience knows nothing about yet.
It's possible. She does seem a little bit more at her wit's end.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe being arrested will do that, and that's really all it is. But
I mean, she was arrested for 5 minutes, right? But she wasn't. It's not like she did hard time for 15 years.
right, that's true.
It was like a week, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a short amount of time. This is true.
Yeah, I think that she's one of these characters that just is what the episode needs her to be.
Right, but you're right. Like the character from this season is such a stark contrast from the first 2 seasons.
Right.
You know, she was a lot more level-headed. She was a lot more. Her decisions were a lot more well-rounded and not impulsive. The only person who got under skin was Mariner, and it doesn't seem like Mariner has influenced the rest of the crew, and that's what's driving Freeman crazy. Like it just, well, you just said, like it just seems like the writers needed her to be more impulsive and more short-fused.
Yeah. Well, the problem with this episode is that it didn't cliffhang anything.
Right.
That I
Nothing.
can remember.
Yeah.
It just ended. Like this was the last episode of the whole show.
Mm-hmm. Although there was a cliffhanger. Did you see the post-credit scene?
No, I didn't know there was one.
Yeah.
What did it do?
Rutherford's helmet from season 1 that he lost in the explosion that killed Shax, that got tractor beamed, and it showed that Badgie was still inside it. And Badgie, I don't know if you remember or not, but became quite murderous.
Okay. I like that they're bringing it back.
Yep. So that was kind of the tag at the end.
Another part I didn't like about this episode was the Scooby-Doo confession by Buen Amigo.
Yeah.
It just felt very, like I was kind of expecting there to be a little bit more drawn out process of getting him to admit all of these things, or them discovering all of the evidence, etc.
Right. And doing it over an intercom too. Yeah.
But he just lays it out all on the table.
Yeah. He just, he shares it for everybody over the intercom, like, over the comm system.
It's like he didn't realize he was in the 25th century or whatever.
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I just felt like, oh God, this whole episode, like he went from being the chummy admiral to villain.
Yeah.
Almost immediately.
Well, and mustache twirling villain. His reason for doing so, I could see him becoming zealous about it, and kind of being less and less concerned about the side effects and consequences if it meant that his name would be remembered, but not to the point where he is going to maniacally explain what his plan is.
Yeah, it felt like Murder, She Wrote, Scooby-Doo, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, Columbo.
Exactly.
That would have been amazing, though. Like, just somebody's like, oh, by the way, one more thing.
I know you've sat through an hour and a half of me seeming like I don't know what I'm doing. But here's just 5 more minutes.
Right.
Okay, I want to talk about something science-y.
I am the person to talk to about that.
I know. That's why I brought it up. Firing phasers. I was going to say shooting phasers. That was just so...
Shooting pew-pews.
Yeah. When you're at warp and firing torpedoes. And I know there's lots of precedent for this.
Yes.
But I feel like this wouldn't work.
Right. You're just going to shoot it right back into your own cannon.
I mean, I don't think... So the way warp works, let me get this straight. You tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay.
The way warp works is you're not actually going anywhere. You're effectively bending the space in front of you
right.
to compress, or you're not creating wormholes where you're tunneling through space, but you're essentially compressing space and then crossing over that, kind of like an accordion.
Right.
So this doesn't exist as a concept in practice yet.
Right.
I mean, I think the math makes sense, but that you need like some gargantuan amounts of energy to make it work.
Right.
In real life.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's how it works in Star Trek. So I think if you were both traveling at precisely the same amount of warp, which means that you are compressing the amount of space exactly, then shooting phasers would be fine. That's my understanding. Shooting, because you're both moving at the same speed.
Well, not only are you moving, so you'd have to be close enough together that your warp bubbles would be connected.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen if you were a football field away from somebody or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
If you both started at the same time and your warp speed was exactly the same, if that was even possible, would there be a problem? But that's impossible because in this particular episode, the Texas class ships are chasing them.
Right. Which we've seen before.
Right, we've seen before. So they're going at a faster warp, or not faster because it doesn't work that way.
Right.
But they have a higher warp factor than the Cerritos. And so they're gaining, like, would you even be able to see them? And the idea that would their phasers just pass through the Cerritos because they are or would they tear the Cerritos apart? Because they're compressing, no, they wouldn't tear them apart because their space would just be compressed.
Right. Right. And I don't know if this is ever explained. My perception is that it should not work because of what I said. Like, you have a warp bubble around the ship that is causing the space to bend around it as it's moving. Like, it doesn't create a tunnel of bent space. You know, there's something about how it's condensing the space around it to make it move through space at a faster rate. And so if you fire off phasers, photon torpedoes, whatever, it would travel ahead of you until it got out of your bubble. And then it would essentially
stop.
Yeah, it would either stop where you would hit it, or it would stay in that area that you had just passed, and it would continue moving.
I think because the warp factors are exponential. That's what factor means. I don't know if that literally is what that means. That's what I took it to mean.
Okay.
If someone ahead of you was going at warp 8 and they were directly behind you, directly in front of you, and you were going at warp 8.01, or let's say 8.1, and you fired a phaser at them, that phaser would be exponentially longer.
Right.
Like, it would look like in Spaceballs when the ship passes over them. It's just like impossibly long ship.
Right.
But I think you're right. They would need to be sharing space or warp bubbles, but no one's ever really explained this. Why, if someone is going at a different warp speed, can they fire weapons at you?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, you did not answer my question.
No, I know, and I'm sorry. It's a great question that I don't think has an answer.
Well, we kind of created our own answer, didn't we?
I guess, but
you need to be in the warp bubble.
Right.
But if you shot something, so the second it left your warp bubble, it would just go into normal space. It wouldn't cross the bubbles. So you're right in that if you're going at different warps and if you're not sharing bubbles, you can't fire at people.
Yeah, it's
it's like trying to throw a wadded up piece of paper across two cars going 80 miles an hour on the freeway.
Right.
So I guess we settled that, didn't we? Star Trek is bullshit.
They've just been feeding us lies for 60 years.
It's all bullshit. Did you notice in the final battle scene that the music was super Star Trek, like Wrath of Khan,
Yes.
James Horner?
Yes. Genuine comment. It's probably because the music for me fit the scene. Where the music actually stood out for me, where I was like, this is really cinematic music for not a lot happening, was in Prodigy.
But yeah, just so you know, we're going to do Prodigy too, so you should all go watch it.
Yeah, with two
us.
brand new episodes released this week. We're doing 2 episodes. One of them will be slightly longer than the other. We'll let you figure that out by looking at the time length.
And the age requirement for the show. Right. But as long as we're addressing the audience directly, everybody go rate the show as high as possible.
Not Star Trek, our podcast, please.
Well, Star Trek too, because we like that there's a resurgence of Star Trek. But more importantly, The Measure of an Episode wherever you get your podcast. Rate it as high as possible because it helps us keep the light on. And if you want to support us even more, if you want to really help us keep the lights on, head on over to Patreon. You can give us a buck, maybe $2. We'll release episodes that don't have any ads in them, those pesky ads that nobody likes to listen to. You get the episodes early, and we have a goal. We're going to start doing commentaries of all the movies if we get a certain number of subscribers. Do you subscribe on Patreon? I think you do. Is that what the word is?
I think so, yeah.
Is that the nomenclature? So, yeah, please do us a favor. If you like the show enough, tell your friends. That's another big one. Tell your friends. Jonathan, have you told a friend?
I have.
To watch?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've done your part. I've told a friend on my part. That's all it takes.
Well, and so I'm gonna take it one step further. If you become a Patreon member and you share this podcast with a friend, and that friend emails us and says, "Hey, I was referred by this person," and so those two things have to be checked off. They told us that you referred them, and you are a Patreon member. You will get our first Measure of an Episode merch, which is a T-shirt.
It's going to be a T-shirt that says Polo on it,
but Polo stands for.
But it's actually Picard playing polo in his youth.
Right, you have to
That's
look
what
really
that
close,
little
but you can see
icon
it.
is.
No,
Yeah.
you will get our first Measure of an Episode merchandise shirt. I don't want to spoil what it is, but if you've been listening to our podcast, you should know what it is. So yeah, share with a friend and sign up for Patreon and get stuff.
Get stuff. What if the T-shirt just said that? Get stuff.
No, I got stuff.
On the back, it would say right here.
I got you stuff right here.
A new start. There's a deep cut. Anybody get that one? We'll never know. If you got that one, send us an email. I was going to promise a shirt, but that's not shirt worthy.
Well, we really can't give two shirts.
Well, even though we just said what we're watching next, what are we watching next, Jonathan?
Well, we are watching Prodigy season 1 episode 11. It was called Asylum.
Yep. And you know what's funny is that I looked for several minutes for season 2
Right.
of Prodigy.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, it's not out yet.
The question is, will it be out?
When somebody actually finally listens to this?
No, like, will Prodigy make it to season 2?
Well, if they just keep it at season 1 and just, season 1, episode 39. Like He-Man.
Right, they just keep bringing it up, yeah.
They can never be canceled.
Yeah. So the blurb states for Asylum, at the edge of Federation space, the crew applies for asylum at Deep Space 13, only for their starship to reveal its shocking true purpose.
Let's go watch it. I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
It's funny, I had one while watching the episode. I was like, oh, I could do that one. And now I don't remember what it was.
Sweet story.
I know, thanks.
Maybe we should leave that one. That's it.
But you already knew that.
Now, was that Admiral Buenamigo or was that the AI on the Texas class ships?
Which one was it? Listeners, let us know.